然后前面可以那个换耳机。
各位朋友，大家好，欢迎大家来参加今天的建设性新闻研讨会。我是公共电视副总经理林乐群。那今天的研讨会我们分为4个部分。第一部分我们就是请丹麦公视的新闻总监Haagerup先生为我们讲建设性新闻。那第二部分呢，我们今天非常难得的邀请到好几位台湾重要媒体的经营者来参与座谈，一起讨论建设性新闻以及建设性新闻跟台湾媒体可能的关系。那第3部分呢，是我们也有几位来宾会从学术与实务的角度来探讨建设性新闻。那第4部分就是综合座谈，我们的讲者会与现场来宾进行问答。那接下来我请公共电视的邵玉明董事长致辞。
Mr. Haagerup, I know it's not correct pronunciation, but anyway, that's the best I can do. 各位贵宾、各位女士、各位先生、各位亲爱的传播界的后起之秀，跟我们一起共襄盛举。去年的世界公视的这个各国的公视电视台呢，每一年有个年度的会议。去年就在德国的慕尼黑举行年会，那时候这位主讲人呢就做了一个报告，谈什么叫做建设性新闻。我们去的人回来以后给我写了一个报告，我就看了一下，看了我不能讲说惊为天人啊，就是说正好它是我们台湾所需要的，尤其在电视。我想大家看电视，尤其看到新闻，常都叹一口长气，怎么这么鸡零狗碎，这么 insignificant。但是耸耸肩也就过去了，好像也没办法治的。那么公视当年成立的，虽然我们没有做到社会所期待我们所做的，做领头羊，但是我们就应该做一些开创性的事情。所以拜读了我们同仁写的报告的话，我觉得建设性新闻就是台湾所需要的。所以我们特别请他从丹麦跟他的夫人到台湾来，给办了这样一个会议。那为了要扩散它的影响，我们请了媒体的重要的负责人，TVBS 的董事长张少威先生，联报的社长向国宁博士，还有我们传播界的资深元老级的这个学者林东泰先生，还有我们这个台湾这个最畅销的一个杂志，叫这个《商业周刊》的执行长王文静小姐，来从他们的角度来看这个建设性的新闻。我们还请了学者专家，这就是今天我们办这个活动的未来。我总觉得台湾值得有个更有深度的，又能够 informative， 又能够 educational， 又能够 inspiring， 还有一点 entertaining 的效果的一个新闻，无论是电子，无论是文字。那么我们今天这个整个的活动会有一个纪录片，那么 TVBS 有个 T 观点，有个1小时的深度的研究报道今天这个活动。公广集团的华视在《华视新闻杂志》也做一个1小时的专题的报道。我们希望能够唤醒我们这个新闻媒体，它是一个社会的 communicator， 它也是 agenda setting。所以呢，我们希望能够做得更好一点。我想今天时间很宝贵，我就讲话到此为止。谢谢大家的光临，谢谢。
谢谢邵董事长。那接下来我们请公共电视的邱越总经理 来为我们介绍今天的讲者邱总经理。
Chairman Sao, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As the member of the Taiwanese media, we have all had to face considerable challenges as journalism evolved rapidly in the past 10 years. Yet, as journalism continued to change amid the new technologies and the change in society, we must reflect on how the news media has changed in Taiwan and prepare to intentionally build new journalistic models for our future. It is therefore with special excitement that I introduce Mr. Ulrik Haagerup. He is the world expert on constructive journalism and a novel framework that offer unique lessons for news in Taiwan. Mr. Haagerup is the executive director of News and Danish Broadcasting Corporation, which is an independent public institution, as well as Denmark's largest and oldest media enterprise. Mr. Haagerup has had an impressive career as a journalist for over 30 years, including working as an investigative journalist and the editor-in-chief at one of Denmark's largest newspapers, an international consultant, author of multiple books and articles, a John S. Knight Fellow at Stanford University, and a member of the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on the future of journalism. He is also a recipient of one of Denmark's most prestigious awards for journalism, the Kavling Prize, and recently inducted into the Order of the Dannebrog in recognition of his contributions, an honor bestowed by the Danish Queen. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Ulrik Haagerup.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. I am honored and delighted to visit your country for the first time, a very young democracy. And I can see that you really try hard to adopt from other Western democracies. And I'm not sure that you should do all of it, but let's talk about that. I was on my way here, taking the airplane, and I was reading the in-flight magazine about Taiwan. And that magazine was full of journalism about Taiwan. And I could see, reading all the articles and looking at all the pictures, it never rains here. The food is fantastic. The waiters are always smiling. And the girls are all pretty. The last thing is true, I can see. So I really look forward to land and see this country for the first time. But then in the airport, I bought some newspapers. And in my hotel, I watched the news. And I tell you, I'm so happy I have a return flight home ticket. This is a scary place. These newspapers and these, I've never seen a country with so many news stations. It's incredible. You have 200 news channels, all broadcasting the same thing about all the bad stuff in Taiwan and in the world. And it is really scary. I didn't understand a lot of it. I could see the pictures, but I found this newspaper I bought. It's in English, and I'm sorry that I have to speak English. My Chinese is just as bad as your Danish. So, but if we see here, this is a story about insider trade. typical in Taiwan. Happens all the time. Here's an earthquake in Japan. Here's something about a conflict with China. Here's some bad Chinese persons being expelled. I don't know what happened. These are some typical Taiwanese guys with tattoos all over the back. And here's Taiwan's cancer clock rate is increasing. And here is a bear. Don't go out. There are bears everywhere in Taiwan. And here's a woman diagnosed with pustule caused by IUD. It's dangerous too. And you go through all the newspaper here. It's really scary stuff. Until you get to the cultural pages, it's about pottery. It's nice. And then sports. It's about Liverpool and baseball. Oh, finally. But about the society in Taiwan, it is all seen with the other eye than the other journalists. It's still journalism, seen with only one eye. All the bad stuff. And that's what I want to talk about. What we really are doing, if that's okay. What are we really doing in the press? And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that this is not a normal talk for journalists. How many of you are journalists? Raise your arm. Working for news. Oh. The rest of you, get out. Normal newsroom talks is always about how to generate more clicks, how to get higher ratings, how to make more money, how to survive another budget cut, how to make another organizational change. It's always about that. I'm sorry, this is not about it. This is about something different. This is about culture. This is about journalism. This is about who we are. The meaning we try to create, our role in society. It's about the future of public service. And it's not only public service broadcasting media, state-owned, government-controlled public media. You can do public service also with private money. It's about bad journalistic habits. And it's why we probably need to change. This about constructive journalism is about the need for us sometimes as media persons to go in front of the mirror, look in the mirror and take the consequence of what we see. The reason why I went into journalism many years ago was because I wanted to do good for society. I wanted to tell important stories to people in order for them to make up their own mind. Tell important stuff. Do good. And then suddenly, after being a reporter for many years, editor for some years, I realized I did a lot of stories that were to the benefit of myself, to the benefit of my editor, to the benefit of my company, but it was not always to the benefit of society. So when I stopped for a moment and looked myself in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw. And when we do that, maybe we need to shape up a little, put on a tie, comb the hair, do something. But normally in journalism, we just break the mirror. When people tell us, criticize us from the outside, we stonewall it. If professors like you are saying, you need to change something, we say, maybe we don't say it to him, but we say it to each other. He doesn't know anything. He's a professor. He's not a journalist. And if other people are saying that to us, politicians, they just want free airtime if they criticize us. CEOs at big companies, if they say, why didn't you don't tell the right picture, then we say, you don't know anything. You just want free commercials. Run an ad. And if NGOs or our neighbors say something to us, we just say, you don't know anything about this. Let me explain what we do. So this project, this idea of constructive news, comes out of a frustration with myself, and I needed to change myself a little bit. And when I've done that, or tried, because it's difficult, then I wanted to change a few of my colleagues, my news department. I wanted to change DR. the purpose of public service. I wanted to adjust it a little bit. And now I stand here on the other side of the planet, even though I ought to be home and do my job. Because I think this is so important, not only for journalism and for public broadcasting, but I think it's so important for democracy. And if I should give you just one example why it's important. One name, Donald Trump. Why is this very rude millionaire coming out of construction, why is he close to becoming one of two persons running for the most prestigious, most powerful office in the world, becoming president of the United States? Because he's talking into the news criteria of all of us. In 2015, he got exposed in news in American media for $1 billion US. His own campaign, it was $18 million. He was getting exposure far more than anyone else. Was that because his policy was better? Because he had better ideas? Or it was because he was talking about drama? He was creating drama. He was creating conflict. He's dividing everything between crooks and victims. And that's how tabloid newspapers, that's how tabloid news outcasts, that is how even serious newspapers and serious news outlets, that's what we have come to believe is news. And then Donald Trump becomes president if we don't take care. I'm not talking about his policy, I'm talking about how he's behaving. And I think it's dangerous. And I think we could say, oh, then people have to vote at somebody else, or politicians have to do something different. And I think that might be so. But what if we changed? What if journalism changed? What if we became a little more responsible? What if we thought about what is the meaning of us being here? That's what it's all about. I don't know how many strategy seminars you've been to. I've been to hundreds, and they are so boring. And it's all very complicated about strategy. Well, you can write big books. Coming out of Harvard, there's always a new thing, and I never understand anything of it. But one thing I understand, this model here, I understand this. And you have to understand two pictures. And the first one, it is directly translated from Danish. You can't it is stupid to translate it into English, and even more so into Chinese, but you get the picture. You have to understand that the toilet is on fire, right? If you don't understand that the heat is coming, you just keep sitting there, right? So you have to understand that there's something wrong. If you don't understand that, why move? So that's the first thing. But if you only tell people that, you only get depressed. So you also have to have another picture. And the other picture is a new way of doing things. That's what you call a vision. That's what you call a dream. That's what you call another way of doing things. And you have to paint that for people. And then you can start how to move from A to B. And that arrow up there, that's the definition of strategy. Then we can discuss how do we do that. But you have to, so now I will spend a little time telling you why the toilet is on fire. Is that okay? Why we have a problem in our business. You all seen these negative curves for advertising revenues going to Facebook and Google, and circulation for newspapers are going down. Up, maybe except your newspapers, but I don't know. But it's like that. So to tell you what happened, this is a picture of my daughter, which is actually it's not my daughter, but it could be. My daughter, she is 25. She lives in an apartment building with 18 other young people. None of them have a television, but they all watch TV. But they watch it, and she will never have a habit like me and my mom. When I say, oh my God, it is now 7 o'clock, I have to push a button so I can get in contact with DR so I can know how the world is. When she wants to know how the world is, if she wants to watch a TV series, she'll find it, legally or illegally, the moment she wants it. And that's the way she has grown up. It's not because she doesn't want content. but she doesn't want to wait for DR or TV2 or TV3 or TV 200,000 to buy a TV series from United States or wherever. She finds it directly. And that goes for news as well. If something happens, does she look for a television? Oh, I want to know. No, she grabs in her pocket and she takes out her phone and she wants it now. That's been credible. You're there now. So my point is technology change habits fast. This is a picture of my son's radio. We have 2 cars at home, 2 Swedish cars, one very old. It's so old, it has a cassette player in it. When I pick my now 18-year-old, he hasn't got a driver's license yet, but he will get it next week. I look forward to that. So for years, I've had to get him up after his parties. So I wait very early. I have to go up, or very, 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 very late to pick him up. When I pick him up in the old Volvo, I turn on P3, which is a DR radio station with popular music, and I think I feel very hip and very young when I listen to that. It takes 15 seconds, and then he falls to sleep. When I pick him up in the other Volvo, which is smaller but newer, there's Bluetooth in that. Meaning, it takes 15 seconds before he had turned off P3 and had turned on his music on Spotify. Technology changed habits. This is the picture of my father-in-law's new television. The old one broke down. It was from 73. It was not a flat screen, I tell you that. It broke down. And I said, I'll help you. We buy a new one. We went to the TV shop and I said, I want a very simple new television. Flat screen. I thought 1 button DR. You couldn't get that. You could only get smart TVs. So we bought this box home and I was unwrapping it. And while he was sitting there with his new 3D glasses, he's 86. He was sitting there, and then he was pointing with his remote control, pointing on 1 because he was used to that, 1. And nothing happened. But this screen came up, and then he said, where's DR? And I said, just a moment, father-in-law. And I was, where's DR? And I couldn't find it because we were not there. But there were 1,500 other television outlets there, suddenly. And then he likes elephants. He found a TV program, a station, sending elephant programs 24 hours a day. And his grandchildren, when they come there, normally they'll watch DR, but now they go on Netflix and find the children's program they want to see. My mother-in-law, she watched programs that she finds in other channels. We have lost the monopoly. Even in these old people's homes, technology changed habits. So my question is, how can we be relevant in people's life when suddenly they have all these options? Should we just produce an other 24-hour news channel? Like, so you have 429 here, or what? Another thing why the toilet is on fire. I don't know about Taiwan, but I know about Denmark and many European countries. We do surveys about the trust in different professions. And which profession do you trust? And up here, you have nurses and doctors and policemen and teachers. If you go down here, you have taxi drivers, real estate agents, journalists, and car dealers. If they had asked about prostitutes, they would have been on top of journalists. And when we make speeches for each other at seminars, we drink brandy and red wine and we say, cheers, we are in the trust business. But people don't trust us. That's a problem. People don't trust us. We live in societies where we also as reporters and editors have spent the last decades tearing down all kinds of authorities in society. People don't trust the church. People don't trust doctors. People don't trust hospitals. They certainly don't trust banks anymore. They don't trust interest groups. They don't trust politicians. And they don't trust journalists. And in societies where there are no authorities left, people with the most likes on Facebook, or who are the most rude and the most noisy people, they will become the authorities, and then Donald Trump becomes president. Right? It's really scary. So if we, especially in public broadcasting, if we do not think that it's our job to be a credible voice, independent, an authority, who else will be? Who else should people turn to and think they get the best obtainable version of the truth, if not from us? So why don't people trust politicians? They don't trust politicians, I don't know about your country, but in my country, because they feel there's a gap between what politicians say and what politicians do. So why don't they trust journalists? Because in greater and greater number, they feel there's a gap between what we promise to give and what we actually deliver. We say we give people the best obtainable version of the truth, but are we really? Are we really? And the new thing is that for the first time, people now have alternatives, not only to newspapers, but also to public broadcasting, also to commercial news channels. And they use it. They go to Facebook, they go to Twitter, and then they go back to Facebook. Because there they can get reassured about their picture of the world from the friends and the people they like the way. So they don't get exposed to everything else. And what is important about a newspaper? What's important about a news program? You sit there, you read or you watch, and suddenly your eye is caught by a picture or something new that you didn't know you cared about. And that's how you become smarter. But if you only get exposed to things that you care about already, then we get more and more narrow-minded. And I don't want to know about these people on the other end of the island. I don't want to know about people in Korea. I don't want to know about black people. I don't want to know about the poor people. I don't want to know about anyone else but me and my closest. And that's dangerous for society. If we don't know about other people, we don't care about other people. If we don't care about other people, we lose the sense of solidarity. Why pay tax if you don't know people? And if you don't have solidarity, you don't have a society. So media is probably more important in a society than politicians are. So it's really important how we behave and what picture we paint in people's eyes. And another thing which is bad is a habit we have, a way of producing our journalism. It's called hypothesis journalism. So, and I was pretty good at this. Thinking in my office, well, if the world were like this, it would be a great story. So you look at the reports and you find all the numbers that will confirm your angle on the story. And then you call the experts. They just need to have a title. They don't have to be an expert. They just need to have a title from a nice university. Professor is good. Academia is okay. But the most important is that these person that you call will confirm your angle of the story. And then you have that. And then you call a politician. And you can always get a politician, maybe the minister, or even better, the guy from the opposition, to say, this is really, really terrible. We have to do something about this. I will now take it up in parliament. And suddenly, it takes half an hour, and you have a great story. And it makes a great headline. It will be quoted in the radio. It'll be quoted on TV. And the whole country talks about it if you don't take care. And it's not a lie. It's not wrong. But is it true? Is it true? And let me get back to that. I have actually 2 daughters, and when they were teenagers, I spent a lot of time as a father telling them who not to kiss, which drinks not to drink, which bars not to go to, and when not to come home. And at some point, my daughter looked up at me and she said, "Daddy, sometimes you need to listen louder." I've never heard that expression before. Listen louder. What is that? Because we fathers, us fathers, we're just like any editor or any journalist. We are extremely good at talking, but we are very bad at listening. What if we listened? What would people say? Any of you being a reporter or an editor, have you ever sit next to somebody who's not from our profession and they have asked you this question? "Oh, you're a journalist, why are you so negative?" Have you heard that question before? Or if you're not a journalist, have you ever had the urge to ask that question? Is news really supposed to be like that? They always have asked me this question. Politicians, CEOs, everybody, neighbors. We're just journalists then, I explain. We're not negative, we're journalists. Shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. If terrorists are flying airplanes into tall buildings on Manhattan, that's news. And I'm sorry you feel depressed, but that's what we do. We tell people about important stories. And then they shut up, because that's obvious. This is a picture of my very annoying, extremely irritating daughter. Very annoying neighbor's extremely irritating daughter. This is her. She goes in 8th grade. And she knew I was a reporter, and she came to me and said, it was a party on the street. We were sitting next to each other. I was trying to eat my dinner, and she was, "Oh, you're a journalist." "Yeah, I know. Why are you so negative?" "I'm not negative. I'm a reporter." And said, "Our teacher has told us we have to watch the news for a whole week. It's terrible. It's so depressing." I said, "What do you mean?" "It's all about murders and scandals and bad weather and whatever, and it's terrible." And then I started talking about what we do as reporters. We report the facts about the world. So shut up, little you, and grow up and eat your broccoli. And then she said, "Oh, I just long for Tuesday, then I can watch Paradise Hotel," which is a reality show in Denmark, with naked teenagers. I think we need to ask a lot of questions, and new questions. And journalism is about asking questions. It's not irrelevant which questions we ask. One good question is, what is actually the definition of journalism? Do you know who those 2 people are? Yes, sir. Actually, I've been drinking coffee with Bob Woodward in his kitchen in Georgetown. So, many years ago when I was a young reporter. So, when I wanted to tell my staff, when I was editor for a big newspaper, what can journalism do? They can actually tip presidents. They did the Watergate scandal. So I wanted to invite Bob Woodward to tell Danish journalists what journalism can do. He would gladly come if I paid him $100,000 US. You could learn from that. That's 100,000. Then I couldn't really afford it, so I thought, what do I do? Then I called the other guy, Carl Bernstein. He's not so smart, but he's cheaper. So I called him, and he came, he did a speech. It was very good. And one thing he said was extremely good. He gave the definition that makes sense for me. What is journalism? He said, journalism is not stenography. Journalism is the best obtainable version of the truth. The best obtainable version of the truth. That's a great definition. There's no such thing as the truth, but there's the best obtainable version. That's what professional journalism do. Really try to get the best obtainable version, depending on how much time do you have, how smart you are, what access you have, but you really try. That is seeing the world with both eyes, right? So in my mind, that's the best definition I've ever heard. So it's on my computer screen, so I don't forget it. So my moment of truth, when I knew, that was my moment when I was standing in front of the mirror, when I knew I had to change something. I had just started my new job. I started at DR 9 years ago. And about a year later, I was coming home after a long week. You know, a long week, Friday evening you come home, finally, and the wife was sitting there, she was beautiful, and the kids were clean and combed, and there was red wine in the glass, and there was jelly in the jar, and it was great. There was a movie later, and who knows what will happen later, and there will be a great weekend. But first we have to watch the news, because that's what grown-up people do, to get the best obtainable version of the truth in the world. What's the best obtainable version of the truth in Denmark and the rest of the world right now? That's why we watch the news, right? And here it came. It went like this. Velkommen to TV-avisen. There's a terror threat against Denmark. Shooting incident in Copenhagen. New regional trains not delivered on time. They're from Italy. What did they expect? Cervical cancer is now a danger to young girls. Strike among bus drivers continues. Woman abducted and abused in a cottage in Sweden. We have the pictures of the cottage. Crisis in the Social Democratic Party before conference. Old man runs for president in United States in a crisis. Court case about airplane accident with a few hundred dead begins. Suppressed North Koreans works out. A giant mechanical spider creates fear in Liverpool. And finally, the weather forecast, the rain continues. I went, what is this? The best obtainable version of the truth. And I thought, there's something wrong here. And I went back and I looked at all the stories again, and there was nothing wrong with any of the stories. They all fitted into our news criteria. But was it the best obtainable version of the truth? Or was it just the result of what we call news? And I started to read newspapers, watch TV programs around the world to see how the world is. What is the best obtainable version? And it's like this. It is headlines like I showed you before. In this is a great newspaper, probably. They're just doing like everybody else is doing. This is from French television, what they produce, well, you can see whatever. And if I went in to see your websites as well, it would be maybe the same thing. I don't know. Probably a lot better. Everything is better in Taiwan. What happens in the minds of people when we filter this? Journalism is a filter between reality and the public perception of reality. So what happened? And psychologists, they have started to do research about this in Denmark and say, this professor is saying news media is now so full of stories on misery. Negativity controls news flow and therefore also politics and the public debate. Apathy or fear is the result. The risk is that people not only deselect media as sources for news, but that they also disengage in the public debate. If that's true, are we then doing a good job? Are we working for the best of society? Or are we actually just scaring people? An example, if I say the word Africa to you, what do you think? What is the first words that come into your mind? Speak out. What do you say? Say it in English, please. Poverty. Yes, ma'am. Another one. AIDS. Yeah, more. Yes, war. Right, more. Yeah, you get it? That's the picture of Africa. Is that really the picture of Africa? This guy, he's a professor, Hans Rosling of Sweden. He has tried to put facts into the world. And he's saying, news media now focus so much on the bad example that the public gets a totally wrong picture. The truth is that life in Africa is improving rapidly. Rapidly. Poverty has been halved since 1990. Do you think that all the young, healthy people escaping Africa, trying to find a new life in Europe, that they know about that life is improving in Africa? Where do they get their picture from? They get it from what they see, but also from what they watch on television, in African television. Because they adopt the way of doing journalism from United States and from Great Britain and from Denmark and whatever, and they try to do the same thing. And they focus only on all the bad stuff. Not that people don't starve in Africa, not that not people in Africa who have not access to clean water, But did you know that 92% of everybody in Africa has access to clean water every day? Yes, 8% has not. But 92%, they do. Do people know that? And the picture we paint in people's minds are also it creates pictures in the minds of politicians, and they make decisions based on what they think the world is. This guy, he makes analysis about media content all over the world, figure out what are we producing. He says, negativity is an illness caught by even serious newspapers, magazines, at least not TV news broadcasters all over the world. And here it comes. The problem is not that the numbers are wrong. The problem is that the picture gets wrong. If you ask people in Taiwan, are you more secure now than you were 10 years ago or less secure? What would people answer? More secure? Less secure. In Denmark and most of Europe, and I am sure also in Taiwan, they will probably say less secure. I don't know about your country, but I know about mine. The truth is, people in the rural districts of Denmark, they don't dare going out after 4. And then we ask them, why? Then they say, because of all the murders, all the shoot-by incidents, all the rapes, all the burglaries. And then we ask them, where? And they will say, in television. Yeah, but that's in Copenhagen. It's 400 miles away. It's far away. And the truth is, the murder rate in Denmark has never been so low. There's never been killed so few people in traffic as right now. Never, in the last 5 years, not one person has died inside a car in greater Copenhagen area unless they committed suicide. Because there's so much traffic, they cannot come up in speed. And if they bump into someone, there are airbags all over the place. So they don't die anymore. Do people know that? No, because news stations, they still fight, like your television stations here, try to compete with each other to fight the ambulances to be first at the scene of traffic accidents. So we love traffic accidents because we overexpose it, because it's dramatic news. That's what news is. This is actually a great survey made all over the world about the difference of perception and the facts and the perception of facts. So here, take for instance France. If you ask people in France, how many people are Muslim in France? The right number here is 8%, right? 8% Muslim. But the average Frenchman think that almost 1/3 of people in France are Muslim. So the dark blue is the diversion between reality and the perception of reality, see? Where do they get that picture from, if it's not from us? Look at Italy. Asking people in Italy, how many people are unemployed in Italy? The right number is 12% unemployment rate, which is high. But the stupid Italians think that 94% of all Italians are unemployed. I mean, isn't that crazy? And here comes another one. If you ask people in the United States, how many teenage girls get pregnant? The right number is 3%. What do you think the stupid Americans say? They think every quarter, 24% of all women between 13 and 19 get pregnant. Where does that come from? That, of course, comes from media. We like to tell stories about teenage pregnancy. It's about sex. It's about something dramatic. It's about conflict. It's a lot of things. We overexpose teenage pregnancy just as much as we overexpose Donald Trump. You get it? This guy, Steve Jobs, had a meeting a few months before he died with Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch being this big media mogul, owning News Corp, Sun, Times, whatever, Fox News. And Murdoch wanted Apple to do for the newspaper industry like Apple did for the music business, making downloads legal on iTunes. Couldn't you do something like this? And Steve Jobs turned him down. And arguing this, saying in the media world, it is no longer, the access in the media world is no longer whether or not you are a newspaper that being conservative or liberal. Now the axis is between, are you destructive in your journalism or constructive in your journalism? And you, Mr. Murdoch, you cast your lot on the destructive side, and if you don't take care, this will be your legacy. You can be better. You can be better. And he was right in many things, Mr. Jobs, also there. Where does all this come from? It comes from saying, also in the United States, there's a saying, if it bleeds, it leads. That's how you become successful. People, the bastards out there, they want sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's how you become successful. Also in news. That's how you generate ratings. That's how you grow your circulation. That's how we compete. I don't think it's true. For me, it came the first day in journalism school, and my teacher, who once had a job in real journalism out there, he said, a good story is a bad story. The rest is advertising. And it runs in my veins. I still remember it. If nobody gets mad, he said, it's not journalism, but advertising. And he was quoting this guy. He was a very famous newspaper editor in London, saying, before interviewing a politician, ask yourself, why is this bastard lying to you? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be critical towards politicians. We should. But are they all bastards? Are they all corrupt? I was doing a talk at a university for journalism students, and I was talking like now, and suddenly there was a girl sitting over there raising her arm and said, in some way it's interesting what you're saying, but it's a lie. I said, is it a lie? Why is it a lie? Because we are being taught that the goal of good journalism is to be critical. And that's not what you're saying, is it? And I said, no, it's not what I'm saying, but I think you do have a point. I think the real problem for us in our culture, newsroom culture, maybe all over the world, we have come to think that the goal of good journalism is to be critical. But we've messed it around. Being critical is the most important tool for a reporter and for a newsroom. It's not the goal in itself. The goal was what? To give people the best obtainable version of the truth. I went to Estonia, which is a small Baltic country in the Baltic Sea. And I did a talk for them. There was a guy working for the business section at the public service station. And he said, when I do stories about business in my country, I must admit I am most afraid of being accused by my colleagues not to be critical. Being accused of not being critical enough, or what we say in Danish, holding the microphone. Just giving people the microphone. That's the worst thing you can say to any reporter. You are not being critical enough. And that's why I said, that's why I am overly critical. And that's why I don't do stories about Estonian companies doing well. And then I asked him, which stories do you then do? Then I do stories about Estonian companies not doing well. I said, what is the picture that people get in Estonia about the business in Estonia? Well, he said, that's my problem. People get the feeling that everything is going down the drain, but the truth is it's actually doing quite well. But we don't report on that. I said, that's the problem. We shouldn't ignore the problems, but we should see both the good and the bad, see the world with both eyes. But if we are honest, what are the templates of news? What are really the templates of news? Actually, when I was doing reporting, it was the first one is conflicts. If somebody in the public debate, and now we're talking theory, a politician even has an idea which is new, good or bad, but a new idea, what do we do in the media? Do we come and say, well, wouldn't you come into the studio and talk for the next 12 minutes about what is your idea and what does it try to do and why do you have it and blah, blah, blah? Do we do that? Or do we invite him and his direct opponent into the studio so they can have a fist fight and nobody can accuse of us for giving him the microphone, not being critical enough, so they can discuss. And if they start hitting each other, that's what we call good television. But what happens is after 2 minutes and 40 seconds, the news anchor will interrupt the debate saying, well, very interesting, but you won't agree tonight, but the debate will go on. Thank you for coming, right? That's what we do all the time. When we ask people, 79% of all viewers, I think more than 90% of all female viewers, they hate to watch politicians argue on television, which is too bad because that was all we did. That was the political coverage we had, having people fighting. But there was never time to talk about what was the idea, what was it, what is it addressing, what was the problem it trying to raise. They were just trying to make the other one look bad. That's one template. The other template is crooks. We angle stories on crooks. And that's why I became a journalist. I wanted to be part of the profession that tipped presidents, like the Watergate people. And then I came out of journalism school realizing I live in a monarchy. We don't have presidents. Then we angle a lot of stories on victims, on the little guy. If somebody comes with an idea, we ask the people who feel the consequence of that idea. And the new thing is, they go together and they are interest group. In Denmark, the elderly people. I mean, if you're more than 60 in Denmark, by definition, you are poor and a victim. Which is a lie. Never in the history of mankind have so many people had so much money when they were 60. They run marathons. They travel around the world spending the inheritance for their children. They are not poor. They are not sick. But we have created this, and the interest group for elderly people makes sure that nobody in the political debate dares to take away, do anything with a pension or whatever. But who are we ever critical towards interest groups? Do we ever ask questions on behalf of society? Or do we just hand the microphone to interest groups, which we do? And number 4 of this is drama. We angle stories on drama, and the new thing is that we now get pictures in HD quality from all over the world instantly, which is fantastic, because there's always a plane crash somewhere. There's always bad weather somewhere. There's always a suicide bomber somewhere. There's always a dramatic traffic accident somewhere. And we wrap all this together and we call it news. It's not a lie, but is it true? And is it to the benefit of society? And can we do it different? Bill Gates puts it this way, and he is very rich, so we better listen. He said, bad dramatic news is easy for reporters to cover in newspapers and TV. Good news, however, happens in slow motion and without drama. Countries become richer, but it's difficult to show in pictures, and people's health improves, but nobody invites to a press conference about the children who did not die from malaria. Right? Is it really so, if we are honest, that in my profession, that we are so focused on trying to find the hair in the soup, that sometimes we forget to tell people about the soup? That we are so keen on reporting on the holes in the cheese that we forget to tell people which cheese are we talking about? Einstein once said, without changing our pattern of thought, we will not be able to solve the problems we created with our current pattern of thought. So maybe we should start to ask more questions. For instance, which business are we in? Have you ever been to Starbucks? Do you have Starbucks in Taipei? Too many Starbucks. Okay. So is Starbucks successful here? Yes. So why is Starbucks successful in Taiwan? Is it because they serve you better coffee? Is it better than any other coffee you can get? No, not really. So it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper coffee. No, it's not cheaper. So it's not better, it's not cheaper. Why do you go there? Why is Starbucks the best, the most successful cafe chain in the world? Because they have understood something that no other cafe chain has understood. And that is, you can get coffee everywhere. Just like you can get news everywhere. You don't go to Starbucks to get coffee. They say, we are not in the coffee business serving people, we are in the people business serving coffee. Starbucks has created what they call the third place, between office and home. And you go there to relax. You go there because it's cozy. You go there because they play nice music. It's not because they can't afford neon signs, but they write with chalk. So it's nice. And they write your name on the cup. So it's a personal experience. And they misspell your name deliberately. So you think it's funny and post it on Instagram. It's very smart. And then they can charge 50% more for coffee than any other cafe chain. So which business are we in? Are you in the TV business? Are you in the radio business or the internet business? 2/3 of all our viewers on our main news show, they are more than 55. It's older than I am, and I'm old. So they will die. Our viewers will die if we think we are a television station. We are in the people business. We are in the Denmark business. We are the ones gluing the country together. We should facilitate a debate about better tomorrow. We should be meaningful in another way. That's what we should do. But it's difficult to change habits. And that's what we have to do. And let me do an exercise with you. If you fold your hands, try to fold your hands. It's an exercise. Goes for you too. Fold your hands, please. Thank you. You can pray that I stop talking in a moment. If you do this exercise, which is pretty easy, you have done it many times before. When you do this, how many will end up having your left thumb on top of your hands? You can raise your arm, and you can take your hands apart. Left thumb on top. Raise your arm. And your right thumb on top. It's exactly half of the room. Isn't it interesting? Half left, half right. And it has nothing to do whether or not you're left-handed or right-handed. It's about habits. And the brain loves habits. You created this habit when you were so small you can't even remember. You were just being bored, you were laying there in your stroller and your hands did like this, and the brain said, that works. And now you do this every time. Try to do what the other people are doing, like this. You never do that, right? Never, 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 because it's awkward and strange. The brain hates breaking habits. Try to do this. Then you get my point. Hey, that goes for you too. No, like this. Okay, try to do the opposite. Now you get it, right? How difficult it is, right? You get it? It's like in the newsroom. It's so easy to do what we normally do. And it's so difficult to do it. But this is about mindset. This is about habit. How do we see the world? If we have a statistic, and we did, a DR, saying 60% of all people in Denmark like their job, then we were just about to do a story about 40% of Danes want a new job. Because that's how we angle stories. Until a reporter said, when we started talking about this mindset thing, isn't it a better story than after all the stories we had about bad bosses and stressed work environment, that 60%, 6 out of 10 Danes, think they have a dream job? What is the best story? But normally we would have done the story about the 40% of the people wanting a new job. Doing stories about, oh, people think it's terrible to work, blah, blah. Well, that was a lie. So, constructive news. Do you know Bob the Builder? Do you know who is? Did you know that Obama has stolen his slogan from Bob the Builder? Yes, we can, he says. Yeah. So, and this was about the toilet was on fire. That is now over. This is about the vision. This is about constructive news. Because can we do it differently? And it's not about changing everything, but it's about changing something. Is it happy news? Should we just do nice stories instead? No. Should we imply some North Korean style of positive news? You know, the North Korea, I mean, they're not allowed to do critical stuff, so everything is nice, even though they're about to starve to death, all of them. This is not constructive news. This is stupid, right? And it's not the cute little story about firefighters bringing down small cats just before the weather. No, that's just stupid. And it's certainly not YouTube clips about other cats on skateboards that are fascinating, fun, nice. I'm talking about important stories for society. It's a supplement. It's not an alternative. It's a supplement to what we normally do. People also need inspiration to solutions. Stories that focus on ways out and hope. It's about possibilities and stories about people who do something the rest of us might learn from. It is about seeing the world with both eyes, not only seeing it with one eye. And because I criticized the In-Flight magazine, only painting the nice picture of Taiwan, and criticizing the newspapers and news channels only focusing on the bad one. It's not about changing, it's about using both eyes, right? So, to give you an example, at DR, we had done 60 stories about bus companies in Denmark losing money because people don't want to take the bus. So, what is news? News is something out of the ordinary. And now suddenly the ordinary are buses losing money and people not taking the bus. So what is a good story? A good story is trying to find just one bus company in the country making money because people take the bus, right? That's a good story. It doesn't make sense if all the rest of the bus companies doesn't lose money. So before you are constructive, you must understand there's a problem. But we have done a lot of these stories. Actually, I counted 60 stories about bad bus companies. So a reporter said, why don't we find one bus company? Does it exist? And this bus company actually exists. And what happened was they made money. And we started finding out, why do they make money? And we could do a story that they put all the bus drivers on seminars, telling them a thing that they had never understood before. You are in the service business. It is stupid to close doors on passengers while the bus is driving. Maybe you should smile. They never did that before. Maybe you should clean up the bus. Maybe as a bus company, we make sure that there's time enough from coming from A to B. What if we apply free coffee in the morning and free Wi-Fi so people can work on the bus and then drive on time? And apply another bus so you can actually also come home at night. And what if we don't raise the ticket price? What happened then? And they did that, and what happened was people started to take the bus. So we could do a story without crooks, without victims, without drama, and without conflict. Was it a good story? It was a great story with a bus driver opening his bus saying, "You're welcome into my bus, we drive on time." It was a fantastic story. And it was also very critical because the next day we could go to all the other bus companies in the country saying, you said it couldn't be done. Have you seen here? It could be done. Why are you so stupid? You lied. You said it couldn't be done. People could take the bus if you do something different. They did something different. Does that inspire you? Oh, well. And then people started to think differently. So constructive news is also by dragging in examples from the rest of the world about problems we have, so we can enhance the quality of the public debate. So we use this constantly in our coverage of the world. When we have problems in the rural districts of Denmark of having doctors to move there because they don't want to live there, we've done a lot of stories, also stories about people dying from not having doctors close by. Then at some point, it's a great thinking, constructive thinking. Which other countries have rural districts far away? Who might also have problems like this? Take Norway. Have you seen Norway? It's very close to Denmark, but they are so long. I mean, it's 2,000 kilometers from Oslo and up to the northern part. How do you get doctors to live up there? So we went up there, and it turned out they had exactly the same problem. And people were dying because they didn't have doctors. So what did they do? And we did stories about what did they do. And there were a lot of things they could do. And they had actually solved the problem. And actually we could do that story and inspire politicians, health authorities, and whatever. Not that that was the solution, and that's important to understand. It's not our job to point at the solution. That's the job for politicians. But we can inspire. When we have done stories about a village where the house prices are falling because nobody wants to live there because it's ugly and nothing happened, and the shops are closing and whatever, we do stories because that's the big thing, because people migrate from the countryside to the big cities. Of course, we should do a story like that. But the story becomes so much better if we can find the village 7 kilometers north of there where they had the same problem 5 years ago and decided to do something about it. They decided if we don't buy more groceries in the local shop, it will close. So they started to buy more things so it stayed open. They started going together every Sunday, 2 hours, and paint and ask the city hall to get money so they could buy ugly houses so they could tear them down, plant grass and whatever. And what happened? It was nicer, people had a great community, and house prices started to raise in that city, 7 kilometers away, because they did something different. In 2011, we had a national election, and our commercial competitor, which was by far the biggest in the country, they were inviting politicians to a final debate in a sports arena, and they had divided all the spectators into a blue shirt for all the liberals and a red shirt for all the conservatives. And they were sitting there, and they had made a boxing ring, so they had politicians up in the boxing ring, and the news anchor, who's very famous in Denmark, would bang it if anybody of the politicians dared to speak more than 30 seconds. And there was smoke, loud music, and half-naked girls with pom-poms, and it was a great show, and we thought, oh my God. And we had people in our organization said, we have to do something like that because that is popular. And we thought, is that really who we are? Should we do that? Or should we do something different? And we did something different, and we invited all the political candidates into our concert hall, where normally cello players are sitting. 1,800 people, we had people from all over the country in buses coming to sit there, and it took twice as long as the other program. That building is just so beautiful that you can't be, sorry my French, you can't be an asshole in there. You have to behave, you have to raise your arm. And then we did stories on ENG, stories about people's problems, and then showed that on a big screen, and then we had a discussion what to do about it. My point is, if we as news organization orchestra the political debate as boxing, politics will be boxing, and then Donald Trump will be president. We have to do something different. We live in societies, which is fantastic. We elect our own leaders. We called it the night of democracy, remembering people, we live here because we elect the best of us to make decisions on behalf of the rest of us. And what is politics? Politics should be about a better tomorrow. But if we only ask people about today and yesterday, politics will be about blame. Who is to blame for what is going wrong? Instead of having discussion about what to do about it. And of course we should do both, but we shouldn't ignore this. Normal journalism asks the questions, what, where, when. On top of that, you have investigative reporting. And they ask the question, why and who? Constructive stories will add to that, asking the questions, what now and how, right? These are the questions for the future. It's not because these questions are stupid. Of course we should ask them, but we should add this. Journalism is a feedback mechanism to help society self-correct. So at DR we now ask different questions, and now we get different answers. So when we uncover a problem, and it's not because we have stopped doing investigative journalism, we just want a big prize for it. We do this, we love it, but we also try to implement constructive angles. And in a normal news program, we might have one constructive story, sometimes two, sometimes none, sometimes too many. But it's not that every story should be constructive. When there's a terrorist attack in Denmark or an earthquake in Taiwan, the most important thing is not to ask what now and where. It's about what happened, how many died, when, where was it, and then finding out who died and whatever. But on day 3, you start asking, how do we avoid this again? How do we build people differently, build houses differently in Taiwan in order to avoid a lot of people dying in earthquakes? How can we be faster to alarm people when it's happening? All these stories are constructive. So we still uncover problems, but we ask in the public debate, also with politicians, a very critical question actually. We ask them, well, it's okay, we understand you think your opponent is stupid and you don't like his idea. What is your own idea? What? Nobody ever asked me. I don't have any ideas, I'm a politician. What's a possible solution? What can we learn from this? What have other people done? And when other people can, why can't we? If you ask these questions, you get different answers. And they're actually quite interesting. Technology change habits, also news habits. When I was a young reporter working for a newspaper, news was about yesterday, and we printed that in today's paper. That changed with satellites, and CNN being the first to adopt that. And suddenly what happened? You could broadcast live from all over the world as news were unfolding, and that was news. So speed became the essence of a lot of newsrooms. We have to be faster, faster, faster. And we report on things even though we don't know what it's about. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that because that's great with television. But that mindset about television, breaking news, reporting live, all that is still running, even with the rise of social media. We think that the most important thing and the goal of journalism is to be critical and be fast. Can we beat Twitter? Can we be faster than Twitter? No, we can't. Are we supposed to? Does it matter whether or not we're 20 seconds before or after Twitter? More important is it right? Is it correct? So technology changed habits. And what I'm suggesting, and we're trying to experiment with, and I'm not saying we have found all the right answers, is constructive news is the idea that news can also be about tomorrow. Before in newspaper, it was about yesterday. The whole mindset of news for 25 years has been news is about now. And you see it to a big degree. Last night I spent a lot of time watching news programs and in Taiwan in my hotel room. And I couldn't make a difference of them. It was the same thing, the same way of telling stories, being faster. I don't know if you can because you know Chinese. I didn't understand the difference. I'm not sure your viewers will. Can you distinguish yourself being faster or more loud or more dramatic? Or do you think you can do something different because people need something different? I don't know the answer. I'm a Dane. I don't know anything. Constructive news is inspiration to solutions of important problems of tomorrow. And does it help? Does it work? Yes, it does. Our news brands are now the most trusted news brands in Denmark. We weren't before. Our main news program is by far now the biggest in the country. It weren't before. Our mobile and online is up 10%, and has been for the last 3 years. Radio news, we also produce radio. It is all-time high. I think it's only in North Korea where the numbers are higher. When independent surveys show that we are now considered to be the most important news brands in the country for people, not only for society, but for themselves and their families. We weren't before. And most importantly, people now have a more positive attitude towards DR news than they had 5 years ago. They hated us. They thought we were biased. They thought we were exaggerating. They thought we were boring or tabloid or everything was wrong. And then the moment we stopped trying to compete with our commercial competitor on their terms and decided we need to find out what's the meaning of us, what's the purpose of us being here, what should we do? Then we cut down on fascination stories and use those resources to add more resources to foreign coverage, to economic politic coverage. We cut down on crime stories and did more investigative stories, more original stories, more constructive stories. All this, the moment we did that, because we thought our job is to give people the best obtainable version of the truth, then our ratings started to grow. The moment we stopped caring about ratings, our ratings grew. This is our chairman. He puts it like this. Our job at DR is to throw light, not to spread unnecessary fear and darkness. People have been inspired by this around the world. In EBU, which is the umbrella organization with a total reach of 1.2 billion people in Europe and surrounding countries. And then they say, constructive journalism is a new way of thinking. It answers the question of why public service media quality journalism matters to society. It gives our news a clear purpose. This guy is in charge of Huffington Post. He was in charge of Huffington Post. Now he has been promoted. Now he runs the company that owns Huffington Post. And he says there's a huge market for constructive stories. I mean, it's not only good for democracy, but it's a good business. Yes, he says, it's good business. Huffington Post is the biggest news provider in the world. It is bigger than CNN now. And one of the reasons, he says, it's constructive news. That kind of thinking. He says, that's been highly successful for us. We have found that people really relate to constructive stories, are much more engaged in them than in traditional reporting. They call it what's working. It's not because they are not doing stories about conflicts and drama and whatever, but they add stories about what's actually working. And people share those stories much more on social media than they do on traditional news. And as he says, what we didn't think about was that advertisers like these stories much more than standing next to a story about Syria and all the car bombing in Syria. They want to be next to this, so it's also commercial good. But that was not that was not because they did it or why they did it, but it was just a side effect. Belgium has started doing this, saying implementing constructive news stories has helped BRT News to achieve higher standards in journalism, better journalism, deeper journalism, multi-layered journalism, and more engaging journalism. In Sweden, they've done it, believing the time is right for a change in journalism. Constructive news must not be mistaken to be irrelevant or sleek news. It does work. In Germany, a print product called Die Zeit is actually having growing numbers both in sales, online and print also, and they say because we have a different approach in journalism. In Die Zeit, they do stories about things that work also. Everything's up. Their main competitor, Der Spiegel, and I did a book, and in that book I did an analysis between Zeit and Spiegel content. And they read that at Der Spiegel. I've been invited to talk there, and they found out they really did what they thought was great journalism, but it was the same week after week about Germany is a terrible place. And yes, sometimes Germany is a terrible place, but it's also something good. But people never read about something that worked. So as a consequence, for the first time, they realized they wanted to publish the site with two different covers the same week. The same story, 2 different covers, just to see what happens. Regional newspaper in Denmark, putting constructive news into the core of what they're doing. They are the only newspaper not losing circulation. And they're saying, the editors say, readers expect us to separate PR and spin and representation of interest from fact. They expect us to reveal disproportions of what power says and what it does. Yes, that's what journalism should do. But at the same time, they say, stop being negative. Show us that there are things in our community that does succeed. Give new ideas a chance. Inspire us, please. 1.5 months ago in February, I went to BBC in London. They have decided, after a long period of thinking about it, going to seminars we conducted in Copenhagen, to introduce constructive news as part of their strategy. They call it solution-based journalism. But they want to do this. This book is now coming out in the 3rd edition. It's now in German, which is okay. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I think the time is right for this, but it's up to you whether or not you want to follow it or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Haagerup. Thank you.